ॐ तवकथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं शरवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गृह्णन्ति हृदयाचनं. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome, everyone, and good evening to our class on the Gospel of Ramakrishna. We have a room full of devotees here. So far, one. Okay, two. And we are on page 242. This is the chapter with the devotees of Dakshineshwar, part 1, and it is June 10th, 1883. And Sri Ramakrishna has been talking to, M, of course, is there, and some devotees, Rakal M, Latu, Kishori, Ramlal Hazra, and other devotees. Nothing exists except the one. That one is the Supreme Brahman. So long as he keeps the I in us, he reveals to us that it is he who, as the primal energy, creates, preserves, and destroys the universe. Okay. One thing that I've always noticed about Sri Ramakrishna is that he combines philosophy and psychology. That is never simply that this is the way it is, but if I think this way, if the feeling of I is there, if I'm in a certain stage of spiritual life, then I look at things this way, and that'll be the truth. There's no absolute truth with him, because absolute truth is experience, and it's beyond words and everything else. So this is very interesting because he says this very often, so long as he keeps that I in us. Now, the sense of I disappears, then so many other things disappear. Will, self-will. If the I is gone, then there's no one to do anything. Distinction between myself and somebody else. All sorts of things that disappear. But as long as that I is there, then we have a certain way of living in the world and understanding things. It's a little bit like Shankaracharya's division of different levels of truth. Paramarthika and Vyavaharika. Except for Sri Ramakrishna, the Vyavaharika is equally real. This is what he uses different language, of course, that he'll talk about the Lila and the Nitya, and this, or the absolute and the relative. So for him, the relative is equally real. So this is very important because this sense of I is something which we all have. And Sri Ramakrishna says that we may reason and understand that the sense of I is something not based on truth, that the real ego is something insubstantial, that the sense of I is based on some false thinking and everything. We may understand that, but the very next second it comes back. This is so natural to us, this sense of I, that even the God-realized soul has a sense of I. Even Thakur had a sense of ego. Only his, of course, was that ripe ego, the child of the Divine Mother or one with God, whatever it is. So he says, so long as he keeps the I in us, that means that always, when that sense of I is removed, then we go into samadhi. Or temporarily, of course. I mean, we want to be able to eliminate that selfish I. Again, the psychology comes into it. This sense of I, which is really a sense of pride, that we want to get rid of. But the sense of I, in the sense that I feel myself to be an individual existent being, We all have that. Even the God-realized soul has the sense of I, but a very enlightened sense of I. It's not based. Ours is based on false identification with the body and the mind and the personality and our religion and our country and so many different things. That type of false identification. Now, here he's talking about keeping the sense of I after having some type of realization. So he says, as long as he keeps the I in us, he reveals to us. So he's talking about someone who's had some higher type of experience, that it is he who, as the primal energy, creates, preserves, and destroys the universe. There's a lot in this one sentence. This primal energy, this Shakti, Adi Shakti. Now, we have two ways of understanding this. That one is that the Shakti belongs to Brahman, the power that belongs to Brahman. Now, he's not saying that. He's saying that he who, as the primal energy. So this is what he said to Nut in that day. That who was this Kali, the same one that you call the Brahman, I call Kali. Only with together with that power, when that power is active. So he reveals to us that it's he who, as the primal energy, so as Saguna Brahman or as the Ishvara, not in that aspect which we call the Supreme Brahman, Para Brahman, which is actionless and which is beyond everything, transcendent. So this immanent aspect that then we can say that this Brahman together with Shakti is the cause of the universe. Otherwise, we have a problem. We have a very big problem. If we start out with this concept that Brahman is actionless, Brahman alone exists, Brahman can't do anything, Brahman doesn't have any will, have any desire, then how do we explain the universe? Somebody will say, well, it's a false appearance or it's our misunderstanding. But where did we come from? We have to be there to understand it. So there has to be something. If there's some Maya, it has to affect Brahman also. There has to be something to make this creation take place. I always go back to my dreamer and sleeper thing. If a Brahman is like the sleeping individual, then what causes that sleeping individual to have a dream? Can we really answer that question? It just emerges. No sleeping individual decides, well, I'll have a dream now. No, it just seems to emerge out of it. That's that inherent Shakti that belongs to the sleeper, that he is a potential dreamer. Why and how it happens, it has its own rhythm and psychological ways we don't really understand. The same with this universe. It has its own patterns and yugas and all of that, why it happens and lasts for certain length of time we don't really understand. So then he goes on. That which is Brahman is also the primal energy. So this is that same thing. Not Brahman and the primal energy. He's saying that this primal energy is not some blind power. Other times he'll say that they're inseparable, Brahman and its Shakti. He's using this term Shakti in two different senses. One as the power that belongs to Brahman, the other as a Brahman and that power together. Then it's identical with the Divine Mother or Kali. Otherwise, it's just a power. That fire has the power to burn. He gives so many different examples. But he never considers this power to be separate. This is why he uses those illustrations. In the Sankhya system, the Prakriti is something separate from the Purusha. Sri Ramakrishna, and following, of course, the Vedantic view, says that how can this power not inhere in something? And how can something exist without? How can we have a substance without an attribute? And how do we have an attribute without a substance? Do we ever see the color red except when there's an object that's red? It has to be the attribute of a certain thing. And do we ever see a thing that doesn't have any qualities at all? doesn't have any width or length or breadth or color or form or pattern or anything. Impossible. They go hand in hand. This is his understanding of Brahman and Shakti. They go hand in hand. They can't be separate. And when he talks about the Divine Mother, he's talking about that same Brahman together with that Shakti power. Once a king asked a yogi to impart knowledge to him in one word. The yogi said, "All right, you will get knowledge in one word." After a while, a magician came to the king. The king saw the magician moving two of his fingers rapidly and heard him exclaim, "Behold, O king, behold." The king looked at him amazed when, after a few minutes, he saw the two fingers becoming one. The magician moved that one finger rapidly and said, "Behold, O king, behold." The implication of the story is that Brahman and the primal energy at first appear to be two. But after attaining the knowledge of Brahman, one does not see the two. Then there is no differentiation. It is one without a second, Advaita, non-duality. Now, the Advaitins have to have some way of explaining how we can have Brahman alone, but also Maya. Then where does Maya come from? They say we don't have to talk about where it comes from because it doesn't have any permanent reality. It can disappear with knowledge. So it's not that same problem that now we've introduced a second category. The like Sankhya, well, they'll have Prakriti and Purusha. They'll have two main categories. But this Maya is something a little different, that it can't be said to be a real existent thing because it ends with knowledge, and it can't be said to be non-existent because the effect is this whole universe. And this Maya, it has this cosmic aspect, that which causes this Brahman to go from being just the sleeper to being the dreamer, to becoming the Ishvara. Who's born with it?
With ignorance?
Huh?
You all are born with
Now we're talking about Brahman now. We're talking about Brahman. We're talking about Brahman now. Yeah, of course, we're if we ask the question, then why, first of all, we're trying to figure out why we're born at all. Why is there any creation at all? If we start out with the Brahman, then how do we explain this creation at all? Once we have the creation, then of course, if we're part of this dream, then we're, from the very beginning of the dream, we assume that that's who we are. We don't know who we are. The Kathopanishad says we don't know who we are because the senses go outward and we identify with external things. And when we grow up, this is the way it works. But that's different. That's this. We all have a little bit of this Maya, avidya, is ignorance, and we're talking about it as a cosmic function. There are two different ways that it works. This Maya. Very often we'll use this term avidya for the individual ignorance and Maya for this cosmic. So with this Maya, see, we have Maya here, we have Shakti here, we have Prakriti here. We have different ways of trying to explain, but Brahman needs something. There has to be something else. If we simply leave Brahman here all alone, then we can't explain anything.
What is the real meaning of Nirguna Brahman?
Nirguna Brahman. Thakur gives his own explanation for that. He says Nirguna Brahman is when the Shakti is in a potential form. Yeah. So, and then of course I'll give Swami Swananji's explanation. That you have a woman, right? Then the woman becomes a mother, gives birth to a child. So the mother form will be Shakti. This will be Saguna Brahman. See, before the child is born, she's only a woman. So that's the Nirguna Brahman aspect. After the child is born, she's a mother and a woman. That never ends. That's the essential aspect. That's Nirguna Brahman. So even so, we can't say that, well, now the universe is here, there's no Nirguna Brahman. That's always there. Only the Shakti and the qualities and everything that were potential before are now active. That's the only difference. So Nirguna Brahman will be that aspect, if you want to say that it's not really an aspect because it's the essential part, but it's that transcendent aspect. So if we go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, we'll understand what Nirguna Brahman is a pure consciousness. Otherwise, we can't, even that we can't say. So Thakur says everything else has become uchishta, touched by the tongue, but we've never been able to say exactly what Brahman is, like the salt dal trying to explain what it's like when it's become one with the ocean. We can't explain it. The master was very happy to see a musician who had come with the devotees from Belgorya. Some time before, Sri Ramakrishna had gone into an ecstatic mood when hearing his devotional music. At the master's request, the musician sang a few songs, one of which described the awakening of the Kundalini and the 6 centers. Now we'll have another understanding of Shakti as it works in the human body through this Kundalini. This is also supposed to be the Divine Mother dwelling in the Muladhara, who can work her way up and unite with Shiva in the Sahasrara. So this is partly poetic and partly psychologically true. But there's a beautiful poetry to it. Divine Mother is coming into union with Shiva. But there is something that changes physiologically and, of course, from experientially as we go, that corresponds to the descriptions of the different centers. Awake, mother, awake. How long thou hast been asleep in the lotus of the Muladhara. Fulfill thy secret function, mother. Rise to the 1,000-petaled lotus within the head, where mighty Shiva has his dwelling. Swiftly pierce the 6 lotuses, and take away my grief, O essence of consciousness. Master, the song speaks of the Kundalini's passing through the 6 centers. God is both within and without. From within, he creates the various states of mind. After passing through the 6 centers, the jiva goes beyond the realm of Maya and becomes united with the Supreme Soul. This is the vision of God. God is within. Dwelling within is that power of individual consciousness. God is without, supporting the whole universe, the ground of the universe. We have this philosophical concept of ground, that nothing can exist unless there's something to hold it up, not physically always, but something has to have a necessary preceding cause to it. We can't have an effect without a cause, and there has to be something ultimate. Otherwise, it's a chicken and the egg. We keep going back and back and back and back. So there has to be a ground upholding the universe, and this Brahman itself is that. So we can't simply have waves without an ocean. There has to be that ocean has to be there. So that'll be the ground, and the waves will be the manifested phenomena that emerge out of the ocean. So that's the Brahman exists outside as the upholder of everything. If we go back to the dream, and the dream is not to be taken literally, that this is just a dream, nothing exists. There's some objective reality to this universe, we assume. But in the dream, what is upholding the dream universe? Where does that dwell? It dwells in consciousness. It's a projection of consciousness, of the mind of the dreamer. And where does that consciousness dwell as an active force of awareness? Within the actor. So God is dwelling both within and without. We feel it within as our own sense of awareness, of I, our own feeling I exist, and is also the explanation for the existence of everything else. So God exists both within and without. Otherwise, this idea of within and without and all pervading, this is because we're taken from the standpoint of this universe. Otherwise, we say everything exists within God. Does God exist within everything, or everything exists within God? There's a little section in Gita about that. And then it says it would actually be on both. They both are true from different points of view. One cannot see God, and thus Maya steps away from the door. Now, this will be both that cosmic Maya, which is causing us as individuals to be in a state of delusion. Huh? So you're right, we're all born with this Maya, in the sense that we're not born with self-awareness. What happens, this is very nicely explained in the child psychology. When we look at the evolution of the child and development of the child, how this sense of ego comes, and how this small child has no awareness of anything interior, no awareness of mind. And I've told this story before, that I was having a conversation with my niece once. I don't know how old she was, 6 years old or something, like 7 something. She was young. And we had a friend who had a child who had some type of disability, mental disability, something. We never quite analyzed it exactly. So she was asking, why does he act that way? So I said, sometimes you get sick, and there's something, you get sick in your body. He has something like that in his mind. And she looked at me and she said, what's the mind? And I didn't even try to explain. Then I realized that up until a certain state of development, there's no awareness that we have a mind. We only know that the world that fills the mind. We don't know about the self within, or have any sense. A very small child has no distinction between its own body and the mother's body. Doesn't even see objects as an infant, just see colors and shapes and forms. And as this sense of I, so Thakur likes this idea of ego, ahankara, that it's something that develops, it's something that ripens. This is a really unripe ego. This is before it's even an I. The small child doesn't have an ego up until a certain age, when it can distinguish itself from everything else. So they say when the child learns to tell a lie, there's a stage of development. There was a philosopher, psychologist, Piaget, a Frenchman, very famous child psychologist, and I think it was he who said that this is one stage of development, when the child understands that there's some privacy of its thought. That I know that it's not true, but I can say it, and you won't know that I'm lying, because you don't know what's going on inside my mind. So that's a stage of development, and that ego comes. And so this is the way it develops. This is what Kathopanishad says, that the Lord created us in such a way that the senses go outward, and that's then we falsely identify with everything else, and then with the body, and then the mind, and then we have to reverse the whole process, and that's why it's so hard to do. To stop identifying with all of these external things. So we need some divine help, so that we want that divine Maya, that divine mother, to help remove this Maya which is covering us. So one cannot see God unless Maya steps aside from the door. Rama, Lakshmana, and Sita were walking together. Rama was in front. Sita walked in the middle, and Lakshmana followed them. But Lakshmana could not see Rama because Sita was between them. So she's representing the Divine Mother in the form of Maya. See, without some type of delusion, the universe won't go on. So the Divine Mother wants the play to go on. This is that idea. In like manner, man cannot see God because Maya is between them, to Mani Malik. But Maya steps aside from the door when God shows his grace to the devotee. Now, we thought that they were one and the same. What is this now, God and Maya? Now we're just talking about a little this delusion. When that leaves, this is grace. How do we know that when we're the ones holding our hands over our eyes, how do we do it? How do we remove them? We have to pray that we have some understanding. Here we're saying, show us the light, and someone has to say, no, remove it, your hands are there. So that's great. Swamiji likes that idea. He said, don't keep crying, where's the light, where's the light? Remove your hands from your eyes. The light is already there. So this is that grace that we want to at least have that type of understanding. When the visitor stands before the doorkeeper says to the master, "Sir, commend us, and we shall let him pass." There are two schools of thought, the Vedanta and the Purana. Now, this is all a question of terminology. We may say there are lots of schools of thought. Huh? What does Thakur mean here? I mentioned last time that this is the language that he uses when he says Vedanta. He's talking about the path of knowledge, and he's talking about basically Advaita Vedanta. And when he says Purana, he's talking about Bhakti Yoga and a dualistic worldview. This is what I was saying in the beginning. For Thakur, dualism is not, it's not that either dualism is true or Advaita is true. This is a worldview. This is how we view things. The devotee prefers to think of this world as real, because then the avatar is real, and then this devotion is real, which requires two to a certain extent. So they prefer that. This was Thakur's understanding, and not that one is correct and one is false. That's for the acharyas to argue that way. He didn't care for that type of thinking. So he's basically saying that there's a devotional way of looking at things which is more realistic, not dualistic necessarily, but realistic. So that means as Vyavaharika point of view, we accept is also true. And there's another way of looking at things as more like a dream. We don't want to get attached to anything. We don't care for all this emotion. We want to turn within. This is what he calls Vedanta. According to the Vedanta, this world is a framework of illusion. Oh, and by the way, he likes the Puranic point of view. For him, what he's now quoting the Puranic point of view combines them. Now, we know that there's a way of looking at these different schools as all separate, the yogas as all separate. There's a way of looking at them as syncretic, as working together, as that we can resolve one into the other. We can understand how they harmonize with each other. But from the way he's explaining it now, his preference is not to look upon this world as a dream and false and everything. See, when we're within the dream, we can say, oh, it's only a dream, or we can say that the divine sleeper, the divine dreamer, has created all of this magnificent dream world for us. There's a different way of looking at it, that's all.
Swamiji, what is the practical application of this philosophy? That, it's all changing or it's not real. When people are interacting, what's the practical aspect? Is it like not to judge anybody because if you are changing, I'm changing that way?
It's to know our real nature, that is perfect and is divine and is eternal and is unaffected by anything else. And to know that every time we identify with the body, that we feel, oh, now I'm sick, now I don't feel well, with the mind, now I'm happy, this and that. It's a way to transcend all of that and to be impervious to the changes of the world, so that no matter what happens, that I'll remain established in the self, unmoved, like Mount Meru. Those who can achieve that state, they've achieved that state of absolute perfection. They can still identify with other things and weep and wail with other people, but they know that I'm beyond all of this, that I can't be touched. Like we're inside of some protective armor. It's a fantastic thing. And there's no attachment, and tremendous strength and fearlessness comes from it. Look at Swamiji, the tremendous fearlessness, tremendous strength that he could do anything. It comes from this point of view. The other, wholly dependent upon mother, that's also a beautiful idea. I can't do anything, mother do everything for me. The other is, all power lies within me, I can do anything. They're both beautiful ideas. Huh? It's a question of what suits us. And can we utilize both? Can there be times when we want to say mother, mother, mother? Swamiji did both. Swami Turiyananda did both. So that's a great challenge if we can do that. If we can realize that all power, all perfection is already within us, and at the same time fully rely and depend and surrender to the Divine Mother. Then we've achieved everything if we can do both. But there's tremendous efficacy, tremendous power that comes from this Advaitic standpoint.
Swamiji, doesn't Thakur teach us that once we recognize Maya, like I think Swami Brahmananda was playing with the children with some mask on, and then he was scaring them, and then they said, "Oh, it's just our uncle, it's a Brahmanandi," and so all the fear and everything.
Yes.
So shouldn't Maya disappear on us once we recognize that we are?
Yeah, there's a beautiful verse. I don't remember it, of course, but it says once we recognize Maya, she runs away out of embarrassment or in shame, something like lajja. Huh? That yeah, but it comes back. This is his point of view. It comes back in its own way. Because part of this Maya is the sense of I, this ego. So this ripe ego, it still comes back, and identification with the body never leaves us. I never think that your body is my body, huh? Because I see the world through the senses that belong to this physical body. But I know that I'm something separate from it. So we can say that the first one, there's a little Maya there, false identification. But we all have that. I mean, that comes with life. But there's ultimate type of understanding that I have this transcendent existence, that I was never born. That once we have that, then we're free from Maya. But as I say, a trace can remain with. I still feel that I'm this body. So Thakur gives different examples. Huh? We dream we're being chased by a tiger. We wake up, we say, "Oh, there's no tiger," but he says, still the heart beats a little bit. The trace from that fear that we felt before. So he gives a few examples like that. What other examples? One other example. The goat, huh? That they slaughter a goat, and the head is cut off, and it's completely dead, but still the leg will, for a little while, will twitch and twitter and everything. Yeah. So a little remnant of that Maya remains. Huh? Otherwise, we can't live in the world. Even Thakur said, even the avatar has to have some identification with the body and with the mind and with emotions and everything like that. Something that's pure gold is useless. There has to be a little bit of an alloy mixed with it. But it's not harmful, he says. It's different. So that's why even the avatar has an ego, but it's a ripe ego. But the fact that it's an ego at all means there's a little mixture, a little Maya is there. But the real Maya, which keeps us bound, that's gone. That once it's recognized, then it's gone. Trace comes back a little bit. Now, Thakur is going to explain these two schools of thought, Vedanta and Purana, according to two different songs. He uses this example over and over in the gospel. I was once very taken with Ram Prasad to the extent where I thought I might do my dissertation on Ram Prasad. So I read a lot of things about him and everything. And in his village, there, of course, he was a Shakta, worshiper of the Divine Mother, and composed all of the songs about the Divine Mother. In his village, there was, I can't remember his name, something Goswami. He was a Vaishnava. Huh? And when Ram Prasad would compose a song and sing a song, he would compose an answer song, huh? Something that, philosophically, it would be something to contradict it, and to show that something's wrong. So anyhow, he would follow Ram Prasad around. So one of the songs that Ram Prasad wrote was this world is a framework of illusion. Then he wrote that song, This World is a Mansion of Mirth. So Thakur always liked that. He doesn't seem to mention that it's Ram Prasad and this other guy was really just a thorn in the side of Ram Prasad. Yeah. But from a philosophical point of view, he always took this mansion of this framework of delusion as a preliminary idea. In order, we want to have some detachment and everything. After realization, then we can see that it's joy. So he takes the second one more as this vijnana idea. The jnani will say, no, I don't want to get attached. Everything is suffering, this and that. He says it's a little bit too timid. He likes this other idea. Anyhow, he'll explain a little bit. According to the Vedanta, this world is a framework of illusion. That is to say, it is all illusory like a dream. But according to the Purana, the books of devotion, so it doesn't have to be just the Puranas. Any of these devotional books, the Mahabharata, Ramayana, even Gita to a certain extent, it'll include all of them. He uses Purana just as a generic term. According to the Purana, the books of devotion, God himself has become the 24 cosmic principles. Worship God both within and without. Now, this is that great dilemma that which one is it? I'm not this, not this, not this, not this. Huh? I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not this. We have to separate everything else. Brahman is not anything that's changing. We're starting out with two categories. The Advaitins start out with two categories. If you want to challenge an Advaitin, you say that everything is one. Then why are you always saying the real and unreal? And the seer and the seen? Huh? Dirigdrishya Viveka, that means two things. Huh? So Sri Ramakrishna says that this is preliminary, that in the beginning, because everything is all mixed up, everything is all mixed up, that we have to distinguish one thing from the other until we get to that one thing, and then we see that that's the source of everything else. So we do this neti neti in order to get to the roof. Then we come back down and we see that which we said was different and separate is also a manifestation. Also a manifestation. But in the beginning, we don't know how to separate things out. I don't know what the difference is between myself and my body and my mind and my senses and all of that. So I have to say that Dirigdrishya Viveka, that the seer is something separate from the seen, or the object of that I possess has to be different from the possessor. I have a body, I'm not the body. I have a mind, I'm not the mind. We reason like that. It's necessary because in the beginning we don't know. Everything has gotten mixed up. So this is where Thakur says that the swan has the ability to secrete some type of acid which will make the milk separate into curds and whey, and can just eliminate the watery part and take the essential part. But it's all milk. It's all one. But still, we have to learn to distinguish that way. So
the Advaitin, when he reaches wherever he reaches, and he realizes that there is only one reality, nothing else. So for him then, is it the world always stays as a coilless, motionless snake, or the snake wriggles for him also?
as long as we're in the world, the snake wriggles. But we know it's the same. This is always a question. Do we, if we see something as it really is, say with artificial fruit, that if we see it as wax, can we still see it as apples and bananas and things like that? If we see the apples and bananas, are we not seeing the? This is always a question in these academic studies of mysticism and everything. And many of them say that you either see the world or God. You don't see both at the same time. Now, for Thakur, he saw that whenever he said, I see that it's all one. You think he didn't see tables and chairs at the time? Of course he did. But it was a deeper type of realization. So the God realized soul will live in the midst of the lila, but know that it's the same as the nitya, that they're both real. We live in this change this world, and we don't see that, understand that reality behind it. We experience ourselves, and we identify with the personality and everything. We have some glimpse, of course. This is the difference, that we have no glimpse of that reality which is upholding this universe, but that which is beyond, which is lying beneath our surface personality, that real I, that consciousness, is not only accessible by us, but we can't escape it. We know that we exist. We use that consciousness. We know that we exist. That there's no way to get away from that. No one can tell us we don't exist. And we know that doesn't mean it's a physical object. We know what that means, that I exist, that as an I, but I'm confused about what that I is exactly. So this Vedantic idea of neti neti is that we want to understand that awareness is not dependent upon anything else, that it's absolute, and I am that. Think of the power and strength of that. That means that I'm one with everybody else also. When I live in the world of duality, I feel one with everybody else. Otherwise, I go into that higher state. No one else exists at that time. But aside from maybe a very small percentage, the real Advaitin, when he goes into Nirvikalpa Samadhi and the whole world disappears, does not feel that the world really disappeared for everybody else, that it continues for everybody else. Otherwise, it's pure idealism. There are schools like that, but it's kind of a dead-end philosophy.
So do they, even the Advaitins in our order, do they accept Thakur's view of Vijnana then?
His view of?
Vijnana.
Vijnana. Yeah, of course. Of course. They may not accept his view of avatar. Well, except when he says the avatar is like the window through which you can see the field and the hole in the wall, all of that. We had a great monk of our order named Bharat Maharaj, and he was a real Advaitin. He didn't go for any ritual or anything like that. He had his devotion, of course, but nothing ritual, no bowing down. They used to say that he would go into the temple at Balarmad on these special occasions when Thakur is all decorated and everything, just to see the decorations and enjoy it and everything. But a very loving soul, very, very loving soul. He would spend hours and hours with the devotees. He sat in his office. It was near, if you know the row of offices, and near the monks' quarters on the right side, near the Ganges there. There's a big office there. It's changed a little bit now. He would sit there all day long. Devotees would come, and he would lovingly serve them and talk to them and everything. But strict Advaita.
Swami, it's interesting that we are focusing on right now.
Hmm.
If we see the Vivek Chudamani, Shankaracharya, he uses the same I to identify with Atman because of the existence part. That because the absolute exists, we exist. So from that point of view, this I is also a hint of the true self we are.
Yeah, the Advaitin will say that the real meaning of I is the Atman. That's all.
Yeah.
And when I say I know something, who is it that knows something? This awareness is present to the self. It comes through the mind and everything, but the real knower is the self. So according to the Vedanta, this world is a framework of illusion. That is to say, it is all illusory like a dream. I'll talk about that in a second. But according to the Purana, the books of devotion, God himself has become the 24 cosmic principles. Worship God both within and without. Now, this idea of the dream, I like it. I don't take it literally. It's a very nice way of understanding the dreamer and the sleeper and the actor. These three aspects of it. But again, there's a psychological element to it, that those who really identify with the witness, then it's kind of a passing show. Then they have a real feeling for the impermanent nature of it. People who live a long life. I remember when I was in college, I had a friend whose grandmother was 100 years old. And we would talk to her, and she would say, yes, I remember when the horse and buggy was there, and then the cars came, and you just got the sense that to her, it was just like a big dream. How now people, this big thing can fly in the air. How is it possible? Yeah? So just the dream-like sense to it, that we don't have to say that I'm really dreaming, that I'll wake up, that I'll find out that didn't really exist at that time, nobody else existed. We don't have to take it that way, but there's a dream-like quality to it. And sometimes things happen. We've all had this experience where maybe there's an accident or something happens. We're late for a meeting, and we go to the car, and then we close the door, and we realize that we locked the keys inside, and the car is running. And then we think, no, I didn't really do this. This has to be a dream. Huh? Sometimes it is, and then we wake up from it. But other times we say, oh my, did I really do that? Yeah. Or you have a car accident, God forbid. Sometimes it has that dream-like quality. Did this really happen? Yeah, we questioned it. And then we'll have dreams that are so real that I have this feeling, it may be true, it may not be true, but that my earliest memory is a dream. That I had a nightmare when I was little about trying to climb up this sand, and I kept falling down and climbing, falling down. I couldn't do it. It was so real. It was far more real to me as a child than anything that happened in the waking state. And that's a memory that I still have it. Huh? And I don't remember anything from when I was 3 years old or 4 years old, something like that. So sometimes the dream state seems more real than the waking state, and the waking state seems more dreamlike than the dream. When I was a philosophy student in college, my first philosophy course, first or second course, I wrote a paper on the reality of dreams. Here I'm 19 years old. I didn't know anything about Vedanta, but somehow I was intrigued by this question of how is the waking state different from the dream state? And I came to the conclusion that while we're within the dream, it's every bit as real as the waking state while we're awake. 100% Advaita Vedantic idea. I had no idea, but when I read about it later, I thought, oh, isn't that curious? But so what I would do, I tried to train my mind so that I could recognize when it was a dream. So what I did was in the waking state, I would constantly ask myself, is this a dream or is it not a dream? So to train my mind to do it while I was dreaming. So how would I do it? I would say, well, now look, objectively, does this make sense? Are you really meeting these people that you knew before? And I would conclude, yes, that it makes sense. So I could train myself so that while I was dreaming, that I could reach the point where I would say that, no, this is a dream. And a lot of people, other people can do it. And then the dream would end. So I would say, no, this can't be happening. I know that I've had this type of dream before, that I must be dreaming, and the dream would end. But every time in the dream, when I said I must be dreaming, I was identified with a dream character. And when I woke up and found myself in bed, I would say, no, I really didn't know when I said I, that this was the real I. So it's a very curious type of thing. And then I used to have these dreams where I would wake up from the dream and I would still be dreaming. I wake up from the dream within the dream. I would say, and now I figured out I'm really dreaming. That I would wake up, I'd be proud of myself and everything. And then I'd really wake up and say, oh, I was fooled again.
Swami, maybe I'm going off topic, I don't know. The early experience you told us when you are a child, dream from that time
Yes.
you remember still. Could that be from a past life?
It could, but it doesn't have to. That wouldn't change the experience of it or anything. Yeah, or the point of the whole thing. Anyhow, what I'm trying to say is that we can utilize this idea that there's a dreamlike quality to this world, and that I'm just watching it, to bring some detachment and to see it as a lila, as a play. It doesn't mean that we have to say that everything is unreal. The dream can be real. Thakur, he uses two different expressions. He says to the jnani, the waking state is just as unreal as the dream state. And sometimes he says the dream state is just as real as the waking state. Point of view, but they mean the same thing. But the point is that while we're in the dream state, it seems to us 100% real. Every bit as real as this. We can touch things, we can pinch ourselves. They say pinch yourself to see if you're dreaming. It doesn't work. Because it's just the dreamed person that we're pinching. So there's no way to distinguish while we're dreaming, unless we use that logic and say, well, I know I really can't fly, and here I am flying, so it must be a dream. But otherwise, I mean, we can do things here. We can go to Disneyland and have all these things happen, or take some drug and we have all sorts of experiences, and we wonder, is it real? What's not real? But it's still the waking state. So it's good to have a little bit of the feeling that this world is a bit of a dream. That means it's just floating by, passing by. I like that children's nursery rhyme. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. This is what we're doing. We're rowing our boat down the stream. What does that mean? That means time, the stream of time. The days are flowing by one after another, and it has that dreamlike quality. And I'm watching. I'm the witness of it. But let me do it merrily. Now I don't have to be so attached to it. So there's a way for even the bhakta to like this idea that really it fits in with the idea of lila. Lila and a dream are a little bit similar, but not this idea of everything is unreal. The dream is also a manifestation of Brahman. Who else can do it? How else do we explain the dream of this world if it's not the dream of the dreamer, of the cosmic dreamer? So why not accept it that way? This is Thakur's point of view. So in the Upanishads, we have the Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Everything indeed, all that we see, this whole universe, is nothing but Brahman. Shankaracharya doesn't give as much weight to that. I think his idea is that people will say that, oh, then this is Brahman. It doesn't mean that. It means that once we've had that, it means what Thakur is saying, that everything is a manifestation of Brahman. That it comes from that one reality. Not that we're going to say that wood and that brick and stone is identical with the Brahman. It may be in some sense, the same sense in which we can say that it's all nothing but energy. That we can reduce it that way. Only the Vedantin will say reduce it to consciousness itself somehow. If we reduce it to Shakti, then we're closer to this idea of energy. We can understand it that way also. There's no right or wrong way of understanding, because nobody can come up with any conclusive theory about why and how this universe comes into existence. Einstein made a beautiful statement. I don't know the exact wording of it, but he said, if we can answer all of the questions about this, how this phenomenal universe comes into existence, we still won't know anything about what is it, the ultimate cause of everything, or the why and how of everything. We only deal with cause and effect, one link leading to another link. We don't know what the ultimate cause is for anything.
So, Swamiji,
That's a
where does
mystical
Big
thing.
Bang fill in then? Where does it
The same
fit in?
thing. It's the same thing. Suppose we know everything about that. Then what is the source of even this energy and the black hole and all of that? That we don't know. Either we say that, well, it always existed, or we say some divine power is there. We don't That doesn't give us all of the answer. The real physicists, the real quantum physicists, who the real big, the heavyweights, they knew that they were dealing on the phenomenal level, and they weren't giving any absolute answers. Apurva. Yeah.
Idea
Yeah.
of Prakriti.
Yeah.
I think the Purusha's very idea itself, that proximity itself can cause all these things.
This is also a theory. These are all theories. That does that consciousness have to be present for Prakriti to undergo all of these different changes and evolve and everything? Don't know. These are all speculative philosophy. That's why Thakur says don't get involved in it.
Swamiji, one of my favorite textbooks in medical school was actually Boyd's pathology.
What is it?
He wrote something which I really liked. He said there are multiple etiologies or causes given for certain disease like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. So be rest assured, if there are multiple causes given for a disease, we do not know the cause.
Yeah. If there are optional explanations for something and multiple causes for things, multiple causes we can understand a little bit. But when we say that there are optional explanations and each one is as good as the next, that means we don't know. But when I read Immanuel Kant, who I didn't like, by the way, I mean, it was just too wordy and hard to understand. But the one thing that I always appreciated, this critique of pure reason, that all of these absolute questions, they're all dead end. That you can take two sides of it. That if you say this world was created in time or it always existed, and show that there's a fallacy involved with both of them. Now, what do? We prove one by saying the other is false, but then the other one is false, and yeah. So then his thing was then stop. That's the wall. You can't go beyond that, and that there's no point in banging our heads against the wall unless we want to crack our heads open. Nothing to be gained by it, except that we understand the limitations of the human mind. Thakur wanted us to understand that we can't understand everything through this very meager amount of reasoning power that we have. And even if our brains were brilliant, there's something inherently impossible about answering these absolute questions within time, space, and causation. Swamiji explains that also.
Yeah. Big Bang is similar.
Big Bang is similar. It is very helpful and it works on a certain level but still, say we think that we've figured out that the atom has particles and this and that, and we know exactly how it works. But where did it come from? It doesn't help us with that. If we really want some absolute answer to something, and somebody said, "Well, did God create it?" We say, "Oh, okay, God created it." If we like that idea, then good, then we live with that. Otherwise, we say, "Oh, I don't know, but I know that the self is real, and I know God dwells within the heart, and I know that there's joy in this life, seeing that divine presence everywhere." With a few things we can know that are the important things. So worship God both within and without. As long as God keeps the awareness of I in us. This is the second time he's using that statement. This is what we started out with. So long as he keeps the I in us. Exactly the same thing. As long as God keeps the awareness of I in us, so long do sense objects exist. And we cannot very well speak of the world as a dream. That means unreal. We can say it as a dreamlike quality because time is swallowing it up. Where did yesterday go? That way, but not literally like a dream. There is fire in the hearth. Therefore, the rice and pulse and potatoes and other vegetables jump about in the pot. They jump about as if to say, "We are here, we are jumping." This body is the pot. The mind and intelligence are the water. The objects of the senses are the rice, potatoes, and other vegetables. The I consciousness identified with the senses says, "I am jumping about," and Satchidananda is the fire. We don't know the source of things. This is if we use the example of the sun being reflected in the container, what material sciences do, and certain types of psychology, what they'll do, they'll be able to analyze exactly how that reflected sun is moving according to the moving of the water, or colored according to the color of the water, all of that. But they'll take that as belonging to the water itself. They won't make that distinction, because we're only looking at it. We don't know that there's a sun behind us. We're not looking up that way. We're looking the other way. We don't know that. We only see the reflection. So we don't know. There's an ultimate cause of things. We see how it's manifest in the world. This is our condition. But these God-realized souls, and what Thakur says, how do we know that real sun? By the reflected sun. But we know when we look in and see that reflected sun, we know that it's a reflection. We don't think this is just a mind. We know that there's a transcendent source for all of that. So that's our key. How do we know? We don't do it by looking outside. We do it by turning inside and trying to find that real I within, that real self within. Okay, we'll stop here. And Thakur will go on with his mansion of mirth, Ram Prasad, and his friend, his nemesis. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukam Bhatadu Vikraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamhidya Tum Ramakrishna Shirasa Namah. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto you.